Welcome to class, beautiful people. It's your TTA Pro, Mr. O, back with a standard English convention episode. So on your DSAT, with regards to the, let's say, standard English convention, just call it the SEC, you're tested on verbs. You're tested on pronouns. You're tested on modifiers. You're tested on apostrophes. And you're tested on, that's it, really, actually, right? These four main things. Now, one thing in the DSAT, these types of questions appear about, I want to say 10 to 14 questions. That's according to the College Board, our standard English conventions. In this video, we're going to talk about the most common rules for verbs, pronouns, modifiers, and apostrophes, how to find the correct answer, and how to answer them, or what your approach should be. So let's actually begin. All right, we're going to begin with verbs. I won't cover all the verb rules. There are some things that you need to understand about verbs, and then everything else you can take it in stride. Number one, you have to pay attention to verb consistency. What you do is you check verbs of the sentence. Usually, or 90% of the time, if the sentence in the past, the verbs should be in the past. If the sentence is the future or present, the verbs should be in the future or present tense. So one of the first things you need to check is consistency. Number two, simple tense verbs are usually the best. So if you do decide it's past, present, or future, make sure you also look for the simplest tense. Number three, if you're going to talk about the perfect tense, for example, the has plus verb or have plus verb, make sure you have the keywords since or for. Okay, make sure you have the keywords since or for, or something to indicate passage of time. And finally, number four, make sure you check subject-verb agreement. The subject and verb need to agree with one another, right? There's different ways the SAT can confuse you for subject-verb agreement. For example, there's the subject, comma, verb structure, subject that verb structure, subject preposition verb structure, and inverted structure, verb, and then a subject. So when you're checking for subject and verbs, make sure you remove the unnecessary phrases, right? Remove the prepositions, remove the non-essential clauses. So to recap verbs, number one, tense, make sure tense is always consistent. Number two, agreement, make sure the subject and verb agree with one another. Now, there are other rules involved. However, the digital SAT does not require us to go too deep into those set of rules. Take them as they appear in the questions, because sitting and memorizing these rules won't have too much of an effect. However, if you practice and identify, then you'll do much, much better. Number three, also make sure meaning and simplicity. So those are the biggest verb rules I want you to pay attention to. The next part of this video for form structures, form, sense, and structure is pronouns. Now, a pronoun is basically he, she, it, they, them. I won't, there's more, but those are the common ones, right? There's something called a subject pronoun and an object pronoun. Again, I won't get into too much detail about these. I'm just going to tell you the number one rule with pronouns, and that is for you to actually identify the noun, right? So when you're dealing with a pronoun question, your job is to identify the noun. That's what you need to do. Be very careful with pronoun-based questions because you might easily get confused. You don't go by how something sounds. You go by the noun. So if you're reading the sentence, ask yourself, what can take place of this pronoun? Number 3, modifiers. So one thing that appears on the digital SAT are dangling and misplaced modifiers. And so what is a dangling or misplaced modifier? It's a modifier, which is usually an ing word, or like I like to say, an ed word, a past participle word that modifies the wrong noun. For example, playing in the park, Ahmed's leg broke. So this is an example of a dangling, or excuse me, misplaced modifier. Playing in the park, this is our modified phrase. Who or what was playing in the park? The subject of the modifier needs to be Ahmed. However, what does the sentence tell us? It tells us that it's the leg. The leg is the subject, and this is incorrect. The leg is not playing in the park. It's Ahmed. So when you're dealing with modifiers, make sure the subject of the modifier is correct. And finally, number 4, apostrophes. Apostrophes, apostrophe S, this will be singular, and S apostrophe, this is plural. One big rule I like to teach my students for apostrophes is if you have an apostrophe S plus a noun, or S apostrophe plus a noun, that means it's probably correct. If you don't have a noun after the apostrophe, there's a 90% chance that apostrophe is incorrect. So this was a run through of standards of English that appear on the digital SAT. Know your verbs, know your pronouns, know your modifiers, know your apostrophes. Make sure you learn them through practice. You don't just memorize the rules. If you're watching this video, jump into the practice. You can learn anything. It's your Sema.